Let's read some structural drawings. So over the past 10 years, I've been lucky enough to be on structure for over half of my projects. So I've seen many different types of structural drawings over the years. And though it may seem a little complicated at first, I promise you, it's just the same as reading any other drawing, and we'll go through that today. So if this tickles your fancy, let's hit that like button and subscribe and hit the notification bell below so you can join our growing family here on YouTube. Now let's get into the computer and read some drawings. So we start with the structural drawings, and I know it's going to be kind of boring, but you want to start with the structural notes. So the notes have a lot of great things in here that maybe will not be shown in the regular documents themselves, or sometimes there can be conflicting things in here. So you always start with the notes. So like, let's look in here, the first couple pages, and the notes are usually in the first couple pages of your structural drawing set. So looking through here, you have your general notes, right? So you have the general notes here and here. So it says something a contractor will go, right? So you kind of keep going and you try to find certain things that will tell you a little bit more about the structure. It's like a great example here, and I've pre-clouded some of this. The drawings don't come like this, but I just pre-clouded this. So this says minimum concrete protection for reinforcing steel unless otherwise shown. So this is what is known as concrete cover. So it's how far away is the rebar from the edge of the concrete element. So against earth, 3 inches, number 5 bar and smaller, 1.5 inches. So it tells you all of these different things. So when you're reviewing your rebar shop drawings, you can look at these and make sure that you have the right amount of cover. Not every drawing will have this shown on the details. So this is the kind of stuff where you're gonna have to know and read the notes to know what you're supposed to be doing. Next thing, you can go from here. So like down here in concrete, it tells you these little things. So it says, sleeves exceeding 1/3 the slab or wall thickness shall not be placed in structural concrete unless specifically detailed. So when you talk to someone, or if you're the one doing all the MEP, anything that has sleeving, you have to know that this note exists, because it's not gonna say it anywhere else in the drawing set, but somewhere like here in the notes. Again, 48 hours prior to the pouring of any structural concrete, the contractor shall notify the engineer so an inspection can be made of all forms of reinforcing steel. Again, you just want to know that this kind of stuff exists in the notes, because construction is a fast-paced business. A lot of times you don't have this 48-hour thing, but you have to know that this is a requirement in your documents. So now let's move on, right? Even here, right? This is where it talks to you about what strength PSI concrete you're gonna have for each one of your different types of elements. And again, you might not find this information anywhere else but the notes. So anyway, kind of going through, right? More notes. You got design loads, special inspections, foundations. So like in here, it talks about what kind of fill you need underneath your slabs or underneath your foundations. All pretty important stuff. Or that your footing, so it says footing shall be embedded a minimum of 18 inches below the lowest adjacent finish grade. So if your top of slab is at a certain elevation, they're saying your top of footing is supposed to be a minimum of 18 inches below that top of slab. And again, this is where a lot of RFIs come out, because you take a look at what they actually prescribe in the project documents, and does it meet their own structural notes? Maybe, maybe not. And I don't know if I talked to you about this already, but a lot of times your specifications will conflict with your structural notes because of everyone just copy pasting things all around. So again, you want to make sure that you have the notes, your specs, and your drawings all talking the same language. All right, so let's move on. So now out of the notes, you have your typical details. And very similar to the notes, these typical details are not always going to be shown in the regular drawing set themselves. You're always going to have to refer back to these typical details to truly understand what's supposed to be happening. So like right here, your typical slab on grade details, it shows you your expansion joint, shows you your construction joint, all the different type of thickened edges. And then you always come back to these later on to know what you're supposed to be doing in that specific situation. So going down here, I'm just going to quickly go through some ones that you always kind of go through. So again, your re-entrant corners, you're always going to have these diagonal bars. You're always going to have these other bars here, right at the slab edge. This is like a classic typical detail that a lot of rebar subcontractors will miss in their shop drawings. So you want to make sure that you capture this. Your standard hooks, so knowing for what bar size, what kind of hook and what kind of length you're looking at the bar. So if you're taking a look at this for your shop drawing reviews, this is where you would come for that. Typical ties. Your lap splice is another big one depending on your PSI of concrete. And lap splice is just kind of how it shows here, is if you're extending a bar, what is the amount of overlap you have between the two bars so that it creates one bar, or it's the same as one bar. So again, these give you those lengths here, and then you have your typical through footing sleeving for MEP. This is a lot of things, or an MEP, if I wasn't clear earlier, is mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Those are usually the people that have things that go through structure that require you to change what's happening there. Your typical step footing. So again, all these things that you're gonna have to know and come back to later on. This is another big one that a lot of people miss, and it's the way that these walls are supposed to be detailed at corners, whether it's a double mat wall or a single curtain wall. So you see here, this calls out a double number 5 at the corner. And same here, you basically have 4 number 5s at the corner. But again, this is not gonna be shown in your plan views. It's not gonna be shown anywhere else but these typical notes. So you have to keep coming back to them. Your concrete wall construction joint, this is another big one. You can't normally just pour like 8,000 feet of wall all at once. So like this specific drawing set says that these joints shall be located at 40-foot max. So again, that's something that you're always gonna wanna know, especially when you're planning out your pours. Concrete lintel beams. So a lintel is any sort of extra reinforcement over an opening. You can have lintels in CMU or block walls, or lintels in concrete. Again, looking at the sections here in 3 and 2, they give you here, but it just shows you what that reinforcing is gonna look like at these kinds of openings. And then again, you've got your typical concrete wall reinforcing details. So they show at different types of openings what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have all these verticals coming in to your bottom of your footing. You have your diagonals at your corners. You have your regular vertical and horizontal bars that are coming through at each one of these to trim them out. So again, broken record here, but you always want to come back to these typical details. You have to study these. These are important. You reference them all the time. So now that we covered kind of the housekeeping, let's get into how you would actually go about looking at each drawing. So here we've got a plan view of a building, and usually what I do for this kind of stuff is I try to dig into like one section at a time, because that's the easiest way for you to stick. So it's kind of like you zoom in, then you zoom out. You zoom in and you zoom out, so that you can learn about a certain specific spot. And this is gonna be pretty quick, because again, this is just a YouTube video that you can watch over and over again. So if you ever have any comments or anything that you want, please post them down below. Do my best to reply to you. And if you want me to go in depth into one section and everybody like agrees with that, then I'll make a specific video about whatever that specific topic is that works for everyone. So let's get into it. So kind of looking at this, right? So you look at this, okay, EJ, CJ, what the fuck is all of this, right? So you look at the side, is there a legend somewhere? And you're like, oh, here we go. I've got my legend here. So this says, okay, if this is in this notation, this is the column type, this is the footing type. This is the wall footing type. TS means thickened slab edge, okay, so that's the different thing. CJ is control joint. EJ is expansion joint. SF is step footing. And you look at these, S003, S004. What does that refer to? Your typical details. Right, that's correct. So very good, everyone got that. So if you're looking at all of that, right, it's like, that's why it's so important for you to review those details at the beginning. So again, you're like, okay, here's where the CJs go. So what does a CJ look like? Okay, I'll go back to my typical detail. That said, okay, construction joint, okay. Or sorry, control joint, actually, I stand corrected. Control joint, so, okay. So at these locations, I need to have a smooth dowel at 24, and have my saw cut here. Okay, this is how I need to detail all of these different joints. An expansion joint. Oh, okay. Okay, it looks like this slab is not actually connected to each other in terms of like a continuous concrete pour. You have this joint filler in the middle that is gonna be a separator between the two. And again, you have one side grease smooth dowel at this location where you have it slab to slab. So again, okay, like that makes sense. And then you think, okay, well, if you have an EJ at the wall, what does that mean, right? And that's why this is so important that you read these drawings, because if you have an EJ at this wall, what has to go first, the slab or the walls? All of you that said the walls, correct. You want to be pouring your slab up against the wall where you can create that joint filler. If you pour the slab first, I mean, I don't know how you're going to be able to control that wall, right? I don't know how that's going to actually get built that way. So again, wall first, then slab. So that's why when it comes to sequencing your schedule, knowing these details matter. Okay, so now we got the EJs and the CJs. So now let's look, okay, MWF3. Okay, what did that mean? Let's go back to the legend. Okay, that's a wall footing type. See the schedule on the sheet. Okay, so we said MWF3. So you go down MWF3. Ah, we found it. So it says it's a 3'6" by 1'3" thick footing with 4 number 5 bars, and number 4 is at 12 inches on center. OC is on center. Trans bottom, right? So you're saying, okay, so what does that look like? So you're like, okay, so I have a footing in plan view, or I guess in plan view. Well, this is in section actually. So if this is your wall on top of your footing, call it. So you're saying, okay, this footing is 1'3" thick, 1'3" thick by 3'6" wide. Okay, and then what they're saying is that you have 4 number 5s. So you have number 5 bars on the bottom. Yikes, not the best thing. Hold on. Whatever. Here we are. Oh, yikes. So 4 number 5 bars, and then you've got number 4 bars running across, right? That's your footing. That's your footing detail, right? So again, when you look through these drawings, you want to be kind of building it in your head, trying to visualize what do they mean? What kinds of things does this entail, right? So that's that on the side. Okay, so you kind of make your way, oh, TS1, what does that mean? Oh, that's right, this TS was the thickened slab edge. That's one of those typical details. Okay, now we get to this thing here, right? Okay, what is that again? So the top one is the column, the bottom one is the footing. Okay, so column C2, footing F3. So MC2, okay, that's a 16-inch square column, and that's 8 number 6s with number 3 closed ties at 12 inches on center throughout. So what that means is you've got number 6 vertical bars, you've got 8 of them coming out, number 3 closed ties. So the ties are what wraps the columns. So you got number 3 closed, and that spacing of those ties is 12 inches on center, okay? And then it's at an F3 footing. So again, a 10-foot square footing, which means 10 by 10, 2 feet thick. Okay, 11 number 5s top and 11 number 7s bottom. Okay, so that's what this footing looks like, right? So you got the footing and the column. So as you can see, it's just a matter of going through each little section, diving in, pulling out, diving in, pulling out, right? The other thing for columns and walls is that, so like if we get to this point, 10-inch concrete wall typical, you're like, okay, that's great, right? And the star students in the class are saying, what rebar is in this wall? How do I know what's happening there? And that's why you can say potentially the typical details, but sometimes you'll have specific details in the drawings. So you'll have something like this. At this specific area, your typical concrete wall and footing situation, right? So if you look, you remember what was seen down below with the other one. It's a very similar looking footing. But this wall thickness for a 10-inch wall says number 5s at 12 inches on center each way, each face, right? So you have a grid of number 5 bars at 12 inches on center spacing, both layers. And then you go to your typical concrete column details. So you're like, okay, so these are the dowels, these are what's coming out. And then it was a MC2, right? So it was a 16 by 16 column. Remember, 8 number 6 vertical bars in this orientation, with your column ties number 3s at 12 inches on center, right? So as you can see, for this one area, there's multiple drawings that you have to go to understand what's really happening with the footing, with the column, to kind of get that good picture. Okay, moving on. So this is the slab now. It's pointing at the slab, and it's just a general note for the whole slab. 4.5-inch thick minimum concrete slab over grade, or slab on grade, which is slab on the ground, with number 4s at 20 inches on center each way. So it's a 20-inch grid each way for this whole slab. Over 15 mil I have never figured out how to pronounce this word, polyolefin, whatever, vapor retarder, basically a vapor barrier, and 4-inch thick minimum number 3 fine gravel, which is the subgrade underneath it. And this is finished floor elevation at plus or minus 114, which is just an elevation number. So I don't know if you remember, right? We kind of talked about that typical note said it had to be 18 inches below. The footing had to be 18 inches below your top of slab So this one's saying your top of concrete slab is at 114, and you just check and you look, oh, wait a second here. Wait just a hot second. This note here though says, unless noted otherwise, top of footing elevation is plus 113. But if you're saying this top of slab is at 114, and we need it to be 18 inches below, like what gives? What's happening? That's again a great example of something that we have to RFI and make sure that you're usually gonna have to follow whatever's specific to each drawing, and that should be okay. But again, if you have some, person out there that's trying to stick it to you, that's something that you wanna make sure that you get that sorted out ahead of time, okay? So that's kind of a simple thing of kind of how you look at it basically. Now we kind of take a look at structural steel, right? So structural steel, this is the higher level of the same area. So structural steel, these are the different beam types, and you can see how you have all of these sections here, right? And that shows you how the steel is connecting to the existing or to the structure, whether it's concrete, whether it's to itself, this kind of stuff. A lot of times too, this will reference the typical details for structural steel in those first few pages. But in general, it's kind of the same concept where you're like, okay, this is what this piece is. And like, for example, let's take this. You're looking at, okay, what does this connection look like? So again, how the section works is you're looking this way and your orientation, your right side is here, your left side is here. If you're standing here, looking that way. So let's split vertical here and get fancy. Right, so here is that section right here, right? And if we go to that sheet, 632.2 B4, it shows you this over here. So let's kind of pull this over a little bit, right? So again, you're looking at this. So this is the right-hand side of this, right? So as you can see, here is that situation. You've got your column down below, and you've got this connection where you've got these rods, and you're like, okay, what's happening with these rods? Then you look on this side, oh, you have another section here kind of explaining what the rods are. So that's C2 on the same page. So then you look, oh, here's the rods. 4 number 6 Dewey Dag threaded bars, ASTM grade, 3'2" into the concrete column, right? So what does that mean? That means that you have a 3'2" embedment, but your total length of this rod is that plus your grout, plus your projection and your thickness of plate to make sure you have enough nut there. So when you're reviewing your drawings, you want to make sure that you're not just looking and saying, oh, my rod just has to be 3'2" long. That's not correct. It's 3'2" into the column. So again, that's why you have to be detail orientated when you look at any kind of drawing. But this is like one of those examples where someone can easily get burned because they're just looking at things surface level and not looking at it very deeply. But again, that's just how you go through those structural steel details. So again, you're just looking through each one, looking at all the sections, and again, diving into one spot, pulling out. Diving into one spot, pulling out. Okay? Now let's start to get into a little bit more extra things, right? So let's split vertical again. So your wall elevations, and again, this is kind of talking about how you start with one drawing, you start to learn about it, and then you realize there are other drawings that might pertain to the same area. How does that all tie together? Okay, so this one here is your wall elevation. And it's saying grid M1 and then MA to MC. And in this orientation, if you can tell, MA is on the right-hand side, MB to MC going on the left, right? So if you're looking at your plan view here, right, M1, right, so it's your grid M1, which is this line, so you know that you're looking at this wall down this way. MA is here, MB is here, MC is down here. So what that means is you're looking at this wall elevation as if you're standing on this side looking this way, right? Standing in here looking this way, right? You're standing in this way looking straight at the wall. That's why this here, right, this opening is this opening over here. And now as you look at it, you're like, oh, there must be some kind of window here, right? Somewhere in this wall. Oh, okay. And then when you start to really dig into it, you're like, oh my word. Even though this opening is on the second floor up here, I need a vertical bar in this wall all the way down here in level 1. Or even when you're pouring this footing, you need to know what's happening with these openings down below because all these bars tie into the footing, right? So again, you have to look through all the different drawings just for one area, right? You can't just look at one and think you've got it. There's all these different types of drawings that matter and pertain to each thing. So you have to look at all of them. All the details, all the elevations, your typical notes, and your regular plan views, all combined together to hopefully tell the same story that completes what you need in the wall or in whatever element you're looking at. Okay, so that's that. Another thing you'll get into, and this is a different set of drawings, but with rebar, it's not as simple sometimes as you just having one note in the slab saying, oh, this is just what the bars are. So sometimes you run and they'll actually prescribe to you what bars go where, right? So it tells you all these, 5 number 6s. This is just the bottom mat plan. And it tells you all these specific bars that go into that slab. And a lot of times sometimes you'll see top and bottom on the same one, but it's the same concept. You're looking at the bar mark and then going from there. And then finally, and this is like top tier level, in these details, you may have added bars or added things that are not shown in your typical details or in any of your elevations. So like this example here is not shown anywhere in the drawing set but in this detail, right? So you've got your embeds, you got here, but you're like, oh, you've got added number 7s, a 3'6" by 6' L in this wall. Oh my word. 3 number 6s at 3" on center, each fate full height of wall, right? So again, how deep you need to go. This could be like 3 to 4 details deep in the drawing set that you're gonna have to know at this level. Again, that's kind of just, again, I kind of went through it fast, but I don't want to overwhelm you or make you feel overwhelmed. The point of this whole thing is to show you that all you're really doing is kind of taking it step by step. And ultimately, you're gonna probably learn the most going through the drawings as you review the shop drawings, because that's what you're trying to verify up against. So each time that you go through the drawing set, you'll be learning more and you'll be just honing that skill and just getting more and more familiar with the drawings. It's not uncommon that it'll take you a long time for you to kind of grasp it and be able to see things really quickly. So don't worry about that if that's you. Well, I hope that video was helpful for you. If you enjoyed that video, or especially if you want me to go in depth on anything that I just went over today, please let me know in the comments below. I'll do my best to reply to you. And the comments, like if you feel the same way, like the comment so that I can see where the demand is. But in general, hope that was helpful. If you liked it, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell below so you can join our growing family here on YouTube. I really appreciate everyone's time. I'll see you in the next video.